Hello. So today we're going to be learning one of the most difficult things in mapping. It's called drawing profiles. So just to review, a topo map is this perspective, which just means it's from above. So it's a map that shows you these specific lines of different elevations called contour lines. And yeah, it's an image from above. What a profile is a side view or a cross-section view of what a specific hill or a specific valley will look like, okay? And there's basic steps that you can follow to make sure that you don't make any mistakes while doing this, okay? So, base your answer on the following question, right? So we have letters A, B, C, and D that represent the Earth's surface, A, B, C, and D. And you'll see that C and D have a line that connect to them, right? On the grid below, construct a profile, or a cross-section view, a side view, a profile of the land surface along line CD. So we are being asked about line CD, not AB, not AC, not BD, CD. And it actually has the line on there. So make sure that you're looking at what they give you and just double check to make sure, okay, there's C and there's D on where we're going to be constructing the profile at the end, just so I don't make any mistakes. Now, luckily, we have steps that help us never make any mistakes with this. So let's take a look at them. Use a piece of scrap paper and place it over the two given points from the question. So that was C and D. Mark these start and end points, then label them with their elevations. Okay? So, we're going to mark C and D. So I line up my paper C and then the line that connects it to D, and I'm just going to mark them. So we make sure once we mark them, C and D are always lined up. And I don't mark the letter, I mark the dot that belongs to the letter. The dot that belongs to the letter. Now, we are going to determine what the elevation is. C has an elevation of 100, so I'm going to label this C on the side. And watch how I write 100. Okay? D, the contour interval, is 20 feet. Here's the 100 line. What is the elevation of D? This is 100. We're going up by 20, so 20, 120, 140. D is 140. So, notice that I write the numbers vertically or down, right? So this is written down. The reason for that is that sometimes we get a bunch of different lines that we're going to be marking, and we want to write the numbers down so that they don't clump together, so we know exactly what's going on. Now, let's take a look at step 2. Step 2, this is the most important step. Carefully mark every contour line that crosses the scrap paper from start to the end point. Under each marking, you must write the elevation for the contour line. And we're going to do that vertically. Okay, so let's try that out. So what I mean by that is we are lined up with C again, and we make sure that C is perfectly on that dot and D is perfectly on that dot. It is. And now I'm going to mark every line that crosses the CD line, right? So there's a mark, there's a mark, there's a mark, and then there's D over there. So we're going up by 20s. This is going up towards the top of the hill. So this is going to be 120, and I'm writing that vertically. This next line that crosses it here, this is going to be 140. The next line that crosses it is here, right? So we got this line here, this is 160. And now, if you look, the 160 line goes all the way over here and then touches back onto the line here. So I'm going to mark this and I'll make sure I'm lined up. Okay, good, I'm got it. And there's 160. So somewhere along here is going to be the top of the hill, and then it goes back down to D, which is 140. So this is what I'm left with. I just marked every single line that crossed the CD line, and I wrote its elevation or its value on that, okay? So I'll set that to the side, and let's take a look back at the directions. Step 3, check your work. Ask yourself these two questions. Did I mark every contour line? Did I accurately determine the correct elevation for each line? So let's take a look back and double check. So I see, here's C, and I go across. There's a line, I marked it, and I wrote the elevation. There's a line, I marked it, and I wrote the elevation. There's a line, I marked it, and I wrote the elevation. It doesn't cross it again until here, and it's the same line. So that means it's the same elevation. And we've got the top of the hill here, so it's gonna go from 160 back down 140. So 160 repeats, and then it goes back down the hill. And that should make sense, because we're going from 100 up to the top of Patty Hill, and then back down to 100, okay? So we double checked, we're all set. Now let's see what step 4 is. Step 4, place your scrap paper onto the area for the drawing a profile. Keeping your paper lined up, start with the start and end points on the profile area. Carefully mark with an X every elevation on the scrap paper with the correct elevations. All right, so what does that mean? Let's scroll down a little bit, give ourselves some room. Give myself a little more room than that. And now I'm going to draw. I line this up. So I've got C lined up with C, and it's my dot. I've got D lined up with D, and it's very important that we make sure to keep it lined up. So let's take a look. Do I have any 80s on here? No 80s. Do I have any hundreds? I do have 100, and that is going to be C. So I'm going to mark an X. And then I'm going to go up to 120. So I make sure not to move my paper side to side. I make sure to keep C lined up with this C line, D lined up with this D line. And now let's go up to 120. I have a single 120, so let me mark that. I'll go up to 140. Ooh, okay. D is 140. So is this area right here. And then I go up to 160, keeping it lined up. Here's a 160. Here's a 160. And that's it. That's all I have. So let's take a look. I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 X's there. And I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 locations on that. So that checks out. Now here's the important part. We never, when we're graphing or making profiles, we never put the X's or the dots and just leave it. We got to connect it with a nice smooth line. So I'm going to cross these lines here wherever I have an X, okay? So here is the 100. I can't cross this 120 line unless I go right through the X. Right through this X, up through the 160. And notice I don't have a 180 here. I don't have a 140 here until I get all the way over here, but I have to go through this 160. So I'm going to go up and over, stay right between those lines, and then I'm going to go back down through my X. And there it is. That is my profile. So those are the steps for drawing a profile. It's very difficult, but if you follow those steps and you be very careful, you'll always get the right answer, okay? And now I'm going to do one final check. So notice that I have a hill, and then it goes down. We got to find out if this is going to be a hill or a valley. So let's take a look. Was the original thing a hill or a valley? Look, it actually says hill on there. But notice that it's going up, up, up. It doesn't cross any water, and that's going to be our hill. Now, if this went through Blue Creek, you would expect that a creek is going to have a valley, so this should be a valley shape if there is a creek, but in this case, it's a hill. Okay, so that's how you draw a profile. It's a lot of steps, but once you get the steps down, it makes a lot of sense, and you won't make any mistakes.